Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and respected professional from the world of media and films from Dallas, Texas, USA, Mr. Stuart Cohen. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
Thrilled
you.
to be here.
Thank you. Stuart is the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Partner of SuperStock. He's also a Director of Stuart Cohen Pictures. So, Stuart, before we talk of SuperStock, a few questions for you personally. Tell me a little bit about your own journey. You began collecting photography with your student loan. What drew you to the Cartier-Bresson image, and how did that moment shape your journey?
Well, that's a big question to start with. I love photography. I loved how pictures could transport you. And initially, aside from wanting to take pictures, I wanted to collect them. And I started collecting the French photographers from the 40s and 50s. And there was a famous Bresson picture, Rue Mouffetard, of the little boy with the two wine bottles, and I always thought it brought such joy. So when I was in a gallery and I saw it, of course I couldn't afford it at the time, but I said, well, if not now, when? So that was the first picture I collected.
Fascinating. And can you describe a moment early in your career when you realized the emotional power of a still image?
I think that came right at the beginning. I mean, I think subconsciously, even before I started taking pictures professionally, when you look at certain photographs, they transport you to a time and place. And I grew up in Canada, in Montreal, and, I had a good upbringing, but, I didn't see the world. So you saw pictures that, you saw places that I couldn't fathom. So that's kind of how it all started. And I saw these pictures and I wanted to be there, and then I wanted to take the pictures. And ironically enough, I will interject this, since you are actually Indian. There was an early photograph I saw, which was shot in around 1980 in Pushkar, India, of the camel fair there.
Yeah.
And to me, I couldn't believe that there was a world like that still. And I put it on my bucket list to do. And I went there because it was just like, I live in the United States now, and there are certain scenes that we can't see here. And that's what really drove me to travel and explore.
Amazing. And yes, Pushkar is famous not just for its camels and the fair, but also the colors.
Right, indeed.
Absolutely. But I've spoken to many people, and you're one of the few people who seems to have straddled both photography and film. What do you believe each medium captures that the other cannot?
That's actually a really great question. Well, I'll start with this. When I started out, I had a roommate that was in film school in undergrad when I was studying photography. And back then, we were still shooting on film, and it was really expensive to produce a film. And I felt that I could go out and take a still photograph that I was really proud of, that is just like, boom, it's great. I was not able at the time, of course, to make a film that had that kind of impact because of the cost and the expense and the number of people. So I started doing stills. And like I was saying earlier, I do feel like a still photograph, sitting on your wall or somewhere can just transport you to a time and place, and it's wonderful, and you get sucked into that picture. When you get into like TV commercials, which I do, or of course feature films, I mean, they tell a story. So I was always attracted to visually driven films, and so in the same essence of what I liked in still photography, but yet it was telling a story and it was moving. And like I went back to film school, and then way back when, I started shooting TV commercials because once I had the ability and the vision, I thought, to do that. And I also believe that people that have come from still photography and end up being filmmakers, I believe they're their eyes, the shot design is a little tighter,
Very
because
well said.
you're used to just doing it on a still frame first.
What a great response. Thank you. And Stuart, how does your creative philosophy of capturing the spirit of the moment from the viewer's perspective influence your commercial work?
Well, I think it's perspective. I mean,
Mhm.
everything in life is perspective. And I think, how can we engage the viewer to see it from their eyes? How can we
Mhm.
put the viewer into the scene? And I
Mhm.
think if we could do that, I think it's a huge success.
Mhm. Fascinating. Let's now talk about SuperStock, which is an amazing business you have created with photographs. And very seldom meet people who've converted their passion into their profession. And you seem to have done that well. Tell me about SuperStock and how has this evolved since you founded it in 1973?
Okay, well, just to clarify, I'm not that old. I did not found the company.
Okay,
I
okay,
actually took over the company in 2019, but it's a
okay,
50-year-old company.
okay.
But early in my career, and this was really a pivotal moment,
Hmm,
one of my mentors who I was working for right out of school
hmm,
taught me that there is a business in licensing imagery and
hmm,
video.
hmm,
And I didn't know that at the point. So
hmm.
I didn't know that you could go out on your own, shoot whatever you want, and put it at like an image bank, and they'll try to license it for you. So
Wow.
that opened so many avenues to me, because all of a sudden then I realized, well, I could travel, or I could shoot here, I could shoot whatever I want. And if
Hmm,
it resonated with the public, it might get licensed.
hmm,
And believe it or not, it was a perfect time for me, the perfect storm. And it was the glory days, I'll call it, of licensing, the kind of right around 2000, the 2000s to 2010. And I did really well licensing my work as well as shooting. And that was the early days of Getty Images as they were becoming this, gargantuan company. And I was kind of at ground zero with them. So it really worked. Superstock was a fringe company. And over time, like as you said, they started in 73. So when technology started happening, the original founders were already in their 60s. And I've
hmm,
talked to them, they're still alive, and they just were not prepared to take that step using technology and create a whole new method of file delivery and so on and so forth.
hmm,
So the company was kind of down on its heels, and I was able to take it over. And I did that because of some of the collection that it owned. It was just some vintage archives which were just going to disappear.
hmm,
And and I thought, okay, they can't disappear. I'm going to step in and do it. And I will say, I don't know if it was the smartest business move I've ever made, but
hmm.
it's really been fulfilling. And so we now manage a photo and video library, which houses about 26 million assets.
Wow.
And we have offices in 3 countries.
Incredible, incredible. And yet, from a position of so much, if I can use the term analog media to now digital media, I'd love to get your perspective on the before and after scenario of Superstock's transformation.
Whoa, that's a big one. Okay, well, it was, of course, as you said, an analog collection. And then as people started shooting digitally in around 2007, of course, the newer content was coming in digitally. But then this archive that we had acquired
Mhm.
that seemed to be their crown jewel, I realized when I took it over, well, only a fraction of it had been digitized.
Mm,
So we took it upon ourselves to create a whole separate company that just digitizes this really high end using a phase camera. So it's a 150 megapixel file, and
mhm,
it basically can record more information than the film has.
mm.
So I know early days there were a lot of different digital scanning techniques, and I think we finally gotten to the point where this is the last time it'll have to be scanned.
Mm.
So we've been doing that, and we continually grow our vintage archive because we have rooms and rooms of file cabinets.
Correct, correct. Well said. A few minutes back, you mentioned that you have over 25 million assets. How do you approach curating and managing such a vast collection?
Another good question. Well, the one thing that is really helping that now is
Mm,
AI. Now,
mm,
granted, historically, like the last, call it, I don't know, 15, 20 years, people have been keywording content and,
mm,
using search algorithms for everything to rise to the top. Today, we've implemented a system using AI that can actually create keywords for photographs. And
mm,
actually, when you, and it's, what do they call it? There's a word. It's tagged every photo. The whole collection's gone through this AI process. So when you're doing search, it uses an AI algorithm to help search. And then if you click on a photograph, it'll also bring up similars below it. So you
mm.
could see something, and if you want to hone down your search, you press another one, and then it'll hone down your search. So that is one of the really solid ways we're using artificial intelligence. And that's really new, of course, in the last year and a half.
Yeah, and that must have been a game changer completely, isn't it?
I think it's becoming a game changer because I
Mm,
think a lot of a lot of libraries were becoming a little bit messy because different contributors were spamming keywords and it was
mm.
becoming the Wild West. So
Yes.
this is really starting to hone it down, and it's going to make the search experience a lot more pleasant for people looking for content.
Great response. Next question is going to be maybe a little difficult for you. It's like asking me, what is my favorite book? But out of your collection, what will you say are some of the most iconic or rare assets in your archive?
Oh, in the archive. Okay, that's a good one. That is a tough one. Especially because, believe it or not, I'm still discovering content in the collection because
Yes,
I've only had
yes,
it for 6 years.
yeah.
But you know, one day one of our guys here was going through something and he said, "Check this out." And there was a behind the scenes photograph of Alfred Hitchcock on the set of Rear Window.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And that was in our archive. And then, so just little gems like that, but also, so some of these collections, we have some early advertising work
Mm,
from New York studios in the
mm,
40s and 50s and early 60s. And it's fascinating. It's like a step back in time. I really enjoy going through that stuff.
mm. Amazing. Let's now move on. You have a new division focused on digitizing vintage media. Tell me a little bit more about this initiative and what do you expect from it?
Well, that was kind of what I was touching on
Yeah.
a little earlier when we were talking about digitizing. I mean, I don't expect much from it, honestly.
Mm,
What I'm hoping to do is, we were initially going to try to start a service to do it for other people as well. And then we realized that we had about 5 years of content sitting here from archives we've acquired
mhm,
that would just take our guys doing it. So
mm,
we still like, if you came along and you said, I have this amazing archive of negatives from, XYZ, we would step up and say and offer to help digitize it because we'd want it in our collection. But
mm,
short of that, we haven't really been trying to monetize it for, to get outside work. It's more
mm,
been to
mm,
get more of our content to the marketplace.
mm. Well said. You also were talking about how AI is influencing and changing the way you are going to be not just archiving, but also helping people search. Have you faced any challenges when you are digitizing old media, such as into such high resolution media that you want?
Um, some of the older negatives aren't very good.
Hmm,
And, but I think not really. I mean, you basically, as I was saying, you could digitize, we're getting as much information as possible from the negatives or the slides.
hmm,
And some of them look a little vintage, they're older or some of them might be prints that are older. And I think that just comes with the territory. We're capturing what we can
hmm,
to the best of our ability.
hmm,
And I think that's where we have to leave it.
hmm. There's a whole big movement going on, I know, in my country, where a lot of the old black and white films are now being colored.
Right.
And that seems to be a major direction. But I wanted to ask you, do you foresee your own data and your own platform evolving into an immersive media platform for AR, VR in the future?
I hope so. How about
Okay.
that? The way I look at it,
Mm.
because I'm seeing stuff now that, if you put in a series of photographs, it could start to animate on its own, like using AI. I don't know where everything's going. I mean, the technology is moving so rapidly. And one of the things I definitely wanted to do by acquiring this collection and being, and running it is I wanted to stay current. I wanted to stay in the media field. I want to be on the forefront of what's going on. So one, I could experience it as a creator and
Mm.
experience it as a company that could bring products to clients.
Mm.
So as long as we stay on the forefront of it
Yeah,
and keep our research going, I think it'll be a good thing.
amazing. Stuart, when we started talking, you were telling me how you realized that the licensing industry really made you think on how you could go take photographs all over and then also make it into a commercial venture. I want to ask you, how has the licensing industry changed or evolved in the past decade, especially for independent photographers?
Um, Sorry for the pause there. I don't think
No?
it's evolved in a great way,
Okay.
honestly,
Mm.
unfortunately. I
Mm.
think there is such a proliferation of content out there
Mm.
currently. And
Mm.
if you go, like I just got back from Europe, and everybody has a phone,
Mm.
everybody has a camera now.
Yeah,
And quite honestly, the cameras in the new phones are actually really good.
correct.
So, we're not being a photographer or even a filmmaker now is not as special and difficult as it once was.
Mm.
So, of course, if you think about the marketplace, then there's been a lot of new content flooding the marketplace, and there's been some downward price pressure in terms of licensing. So, I mean, I think it's still a viable business for a contributor.
Mhm.
I think it's now something that can be a nice ancillary business. It's good to get some royalty checks down the road while you're still working. But I don't think I think it would be really hard to make a really solid living just licensing now.
Mm. And would you have any kind of advice for a lot of people who are looking to license without compromising value?
Absolutely. I think it's a numbers game.
Mm.
How do you get found? So I think, you need to be doing great work regardless,
Mm.
and you need to, stay current and relevant and be out there meeting people, and and you need to keep doing it because it's truly something that evolves rapidly over time.
Mm.
And if you step back from it, you just lose the momentum.
Mm.
And after a certain number of years, of course, you have a lot of momentum behind you, and there's
Yep.
more and more work out in the world. So hopefully, you make more and more from royalties.
Wonderful. I have time for two more questions for you.
Absolutely.
You state that SuperStock is one of the last to honor decent royalties. Why is this so important to you?
Because I come from being a creative. I come from being a photographer and a filmmaker. And
Mm.
I think a lot of the big collections have really stepped on royalties. Originally, it used to be that a standard royalties were 50%.
Mm.
And over time, of course, some of the bigger collections have pushed it down to 40%, 30%, even 20% in some cases. And I'm still honoring 50%, even though it makes it harder to run my side of the business.
Mm. Mm.
But I do feel like, especially in light of decreasing gross royalty amounts, the contributor needs to make some money to keep going.
Mm.
And so I want to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem.
Thank you. And my last question to you, and I want to ask you now about Stuart Cohen Pictures. This is your own company. Tell me about the kind of work you're doing here.
Well, SC Pictures has been what I've done from day one. And that's now I've been doing this for quite a while. And basically, we're a commercial production company that work with ad agencies and corporations, predominantly in the United States, but some UK and Europe. We've shot all over the world, and what we do is create content for advertisers, and it all's based on style.
Mm,
And early on, as I was saying earlier, I love being on location and I love working with people. So
mm,
my style is very people oriented and very vignette, organic, out in the world. Not a lot of studio stuff. We do some studio stuff, but I mean, it came from the vision. The stuff that I wanted to shoot is the stuff I started getting jobs to shoot, and that's just propelled now for 25 years. And I have a staff that runs the production company here as well.
mm,
Um, and we're doing it all.
mm. Okay, then one more question. What do you see as the future, both of Superstock and SC Pictures?
I see some interesting times ahead.
Mm-hmm.
As I was saying, I think that things are changing really rapidly. I want to stay in the game. I want to stay in the forefront.
Mm,
Wherever the media world is going to go, I want to be there. And I remember, when digital came along and some people thought it was the end of the world. And then, Photoshop came along and people thought, oh my God, they're going to alter a picture. And then it became part of the conversation.
mm.
So the landscape still continues to change, and I just want to stay in the game and try to lead the charge.
Amazing. And on that note, Stuart, as you were talking, I was reminded of a conversation I had with a very, very well-known photographer in India who basically shoots elephants on one side and models on the other. And I asked him why these two different things, and he said, one is for the stomach and one is for the eyes. You seem
Nice.
to be doing some amazing stuff with your own Superstock and SC Pictures. I really enjoyed my conversation with you, learned many new things about digital photography, about storing and digitizing media. And I'm sure a lot of my viewers and listeners will learn many new things from you. Thank you for speaking to
Fantastic.
me, and good luck.
And advice for your guy. Hang on. He needs to put the people in front of the elephants.
Right.
And then that'll be the way to do it. Anyway,
Right.
okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good luck. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.